Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Juan. You always do a good job for me up here. I like this new song. I think we're going to keep it. Is that better? Not too loud? Okay, good. All right, so it's not going to be a fun one today. I'm usually funny up here. I'm not going to try to be so funny. But I'm glad you all showed up in spite of me being here today. So it worked out really well that the Scouts, I got a phone call last week or so, hey, it's Scouting Sunday coming up. I said, great. We can do that this week. John's not in town, so I can take over. But if you look at the Scouting program and my message today about changing the world, it really plays off each other. And it was just a happenstance that I had forgotten that it was Scout Month. So it worked out really well. So today I'm going to talk about a sermon or lecture or talk that I had given at the Emmaus. I was a table leader this past session of the Emmaus. And I got to thinking 2 months ago, or whenever it was, when I was asked to step up for John when he was away again. I said, well, you know, I did this, and it kind of fit really well. I said, what do you think? He said, that's great. So here it is, and I'm gonna have to read some of it because it's kind of long and the brain is kind of short. So the talk today is about, I'm sorry, it's kind of loud for me up here. The talk today is about a plan to change our world, making the world a more Christ-centered, just and loving community. You have heard about piety in other studies and sermons, I'm sure, and action about the world's desperate need for Christ and Christian leadership. But how can you respond to the challenge? So again, I'm going to point out the Scouts. The Scouts program is about leadership, teaching the boys how to be leaders of the future. Worked out good, didn't it? So in this quote from this guy called G.K. Creston, he wrote, "The Christian idea has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and untried." For the next few minutes, I want to talk to you about Christianity and making a successful plan to live and help Christ make a difference in the world. Michael 6:8. Oh, I'll go back to that minute. For those that keep track of the scriptures, I'm only going to read one of them. But these are the ones that are noted in this paper. So if you want to take notes, feel free. There's pencils and papers and the things that you can write on. Michael 6:8, Proverbs provides a helpful framework for understanding what God requires of us and how we bring about change in these fields of ministries. What does the Lord require of us? Justice in a community and the world, love, kindness to others, and to walk humbly with God and yourself. The first field is yourself, first field of ministry. In the first field of ministry, you are called to walk humbly with God. Before you can change the world, you must have a plan anchoring yourself spiritually. If you're going to bring change to the world, you must start with who? Yourself. Eli of Wiesel tells a story of a Jewish man who sets out to change the world. In making his plan, he said to himself, "Self, basing myself on a traumatic saying that if all repented, the Messiah would come. I decided to do something about it. I was convinced I would be successful, I know. But where should I start? The world is so vast. Maybe I'll start with my own country. That I know best. But the country is so large. Better start with my own town. It too is large. Maybe I'll start with my street. No. My home. No. My family. Better yet, myself. When we try to change the world without firm roots in our relationship with God, Christian community, we can fall into traps. Our relationship with God, Christian community, we can fall into traps. Because the Pharisees are not motivated by God's grace, but they are driven by rigid perfectionism and guided by legalism. The mission is perverted into attempts to force everyone into their own mold, or into one's mold. Then you have the do-gooders. Do-gooders are often motivated by their own needs to be or to make a noticeable difference instead of by true compassion and commitment to meet human needs. You also have the savior complex. Without a sense of God's providence, caring people may feel they must save the world by themselves. Far-reaching plans or feverish activities may be based by more on anxiety for the future than attention to God's and discernment of God's will for his presence. Then you have the burnout. Without a vital relationship with God and other Christians, one's fire for the mission burns out. You can't change the world if you are running on empty. Our motto is Jesus. The strength of Jesus' ministry and close friends with his relationships, his disciples. Between times of intense ministry, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to a lonely place to pray and share his concerns. See Luke 22:39 through 41. Changing our world begins with changing ourselves and sustaining the change in our hearts, piety, mind, study, and the will, action. The next field of ministry is others. In this second field of ministry, we are called to love, mercy, our most immediate opportunities for changing our world through sharing God's love in our relationship with others, family members, colleagues, friends, neighbors, and acquaintances. See John 12:26. Your mission is to infuse your network of relationships with the grace of Christ to make mercy and outreach love a part of your everyday life. Take an inventory of your relationship and grace that comes from you. Who do you know that needs your encouragement, needs what only you can do or give, and needs to hear from Christ and you? Your attitude toward your attitude towards others will either open or close relationships as a channel of grace. Matthew 7:12. I'll give you an example. Do you affirm people or categorize with labels? Having a judgmental attitude can be a great obstacle to the spiritual growth of another. Here's another example. Do you see people for what they have done in the past and condemn them? Or do you see them for what they can become and encourage them to raise to them potential? New attitude can be an offering to others. Praying for others is an act of love. Praying to God can transform your relationship. Praying for others, you help change and support them in their new life. Through prayer, God can open opportunities to reach out and witness. Make sure your ministry flows from your prayers to others. Your friendship with others is a means to be able to share life and offer Christ. Remember this motto: make a friend, be a friend, introduce your friend to Christ. Seek opportunities to share your relationship with Christ with friends. Expect them to be receptive. Be authentic in sharing your faith and the difference your relationship with Christ makes. There's no right or wrong. Just be authentic, not unauthentic. When your friends commit to Christ, encourage their new ways in thinking and living through spiritual support, study of Scripture, involvement in the church, and its meaningful ministries. Society is another ministry. In this field of ministry, we are called to work for justice. Your world doesn't consist of one-on-one relationships alone. You are an integral part of society, cultural groups, family organizations, institutions, workplaces, and government. Your influence for your society by how you do or do not participate as a Christian. You are called to help Christ transform your part of the world into a more Christ-centered, loving, and just society. For example, one of the things that I do on Tuesdays is working at the food pantry here at this church, where I'm sometimes able to witness to others. Your mission is to help Christ change your community by acting as an effective Christian influence. God calls you to do justice, to love kindness, and have mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Michael 6:8. This theme is evident in Jesus' plan for ministry. Luke 4:18 through 19. Identify situations of human needs. Jesus identified situations which are called to respond, which we are called to respond. Matthew 25:31 through 40. 31. But when the Son of Man comes to his glory, all the angels with him will be seated in his glory. 32. And before him all the nations will come together, and they will be parted one from another, as sheep are parted from the goats by the keeper. 33. And he will put the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. Then will the king say to those on the right, Come, you who have blessing of my Father, into the kingdom made ready for you before the world was. 35. For I was in need of food, and you gave it to me. I was wandering, and you took me in. 36, I had no clothing, and you gave it to me. When I was ill or in prison, you came to me. 37, then will the upright make answer to him, saying, Lord, when did we see you in need of food and gave it to you? Or in need of drink and gave it to you? 38. And when did we see you wandering and take you in? Or without clothing and gave it to you? 39. And when did we see you ill or in prison and came to you? 40. And the king will make answer and say to them, Truly I say, because you did it to the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Work to correct the situation. Sometimes this means taking an unpopular stance. Influence groups, organizations, and businesses of which you are a part of with Christian values. Call them to be a partner in the road to a better world, not an obstacle along the way. Both works of mercy and justice are necessary. An example of mercy is providing food baskets to the needy families at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Go, Deltona. Justice, in contrast, aims to determine why these people are hungry and address the factors causing the need to love mercy. Give food to the hungry without acting justly, addressing the cause of hunger, is to fall short of changing the world, like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Joyfully witness for Christ in everything you do. Let people know by your actions, attitudes, and the words that Christ is the source and strength of your zeal. For a more Christ-like, loving, and just world. That's the Christian way. How are you to call to Christ in your society? People of goodwill will differ in their approach to changing our world. As a Christian witness, we should seek tolerance and mutual understandings. But in every case, Christ's Spirit should be evident in what we do and how we do it. The next ministry, the world. The apocalyptic action. Jesus sent us into the world, Luke 6:12 through 13, Matthew 28:19 through 20. The field of ministry calls us to stretch our hearts, our minds, and our actions. Your church or church mission board will offer opportunities. You will need a strong and firm foundation, faith and study of action. At the beginning, I mentioned that I would explain a lot of this. Well, actually I didn't. At the first reading I did. I talked about myself. Most of you all heard my testimony and previously. And I thought, why God has kept me here after everything that's going on in my life. Well, about 5 years ago, you all remember I was a guardian ad litem for Volusia County, where I worked with kids groups from the group homes. And about 3 years ago from there, God put on our family's heart to adopt. So we adopted this one little girl named Brooke. Well, this is our way of changing the world one person at a time. Now, if I can find the slide. Not that one, this one. Now, there's a group of young men back there and some older men, they're leaders. If you guys would stand up, I know I'm throwing this on you. If you look at these words up here, this is the Scout Law. And go ahead and let us have that, guys. The Scout is?
Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
Thank you. So in a Scout program, and there's a couple of us that are leaders that are retired, or just plain tired. That's it. Thanks, Amy. I just called you out. If you look at that, if the boys can live up to that, they're going to be great citizens. Okay? They're going to change. They're going to help change the world. The leaders back there help change the world by getting into the boys what they need to know and how to be young men. So it's an awesome thing. And I have to admit, my son and Amy's sons were both Eagle Scouts. Did I say that? They're Eagle Scouts, and the program was a great asset to them. So, in conclusion, what is your plan? Changing our world, or your world, begins with one small step. What can I do now to make a difference? The boys are making a difference. The parents of the boys are making a difference. The validity of your witness isn't proven in immediate results. Some Christians will plant, some will water, some will harvest. 1 Corinthians 3:5-9. As disciples, we are not called to be successful, but to be faithful doing. What we can with what we have, we are to advance Christ's kingdom on earth as is in heaven. But in order to do so, we need a plan for change in ourselves, in our relationships with others, and in other communities in the world. So, that concludes that.